Hello, Jimmy. You are up next.
Hey Bart, how's it going?
Hi, how you doing, Jimmy?
Good, man. How you?
Pretty good. So, you got a hand for us here?
Yep. So it's a 1-3 hoe or round of each Hold'em Omaha game. It's late at night and it's four-handed.
Ho, what do you mean ho?
Well, we call it hoe Hold'em Omaha. So
Oh, H-O. H-O, yeah.
oh, yeah, exactly.
We used to call H-O, because when you said that, I was thinking H-O-E, which is a limit rotation.
Now nobody will play limit with me. Well, we don't play
Yeah.
limit, but
They used to call this H-A online. I don't think anybody actually calls it H-A in reality. Half hold them.
sometimes I see it as ROE now,
Yeah,
round of each. But
yeah.
we try to mix as much Omaha in as we can.
ROE used to be Raz, Omaha, and Studied or Better for me. I've played that at 200, 400 at the series before.
Nobody will play high low with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a private club. We're in Minnesota.
Oh, cool.
We don't really have no limit hold'em. I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, you guys have that stupid cap betting or something, right?
We have it's really stupid. So yeah, it's 2 to 100 spread limit is the
Right.
biggest game. They'll spread, even though in the pits next to you, the Baccarat or whatever, you can bet up to 300.
All right. So this is a half-half game, but it's obviously in the no limit half, right?
Correct. We're playing no limit hold'em. Yep.
But that's pretty good background information because a half-half game, and I can tell you from firsthand knowledge of this, plays differently sometimes than Hold'em because you have some PLO players in there because it might be the only sort of game that has PLO in it and people have want to play PLO. So
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think it changes that dynamics. And I think maybe not this hand exactly, but you know, people are used to seeing the nuts a little bit more. Bigger hands are getting made. We're four-handed. It's me and the villain. I'm in the big blind. We're 2,500 effective. He has me covered.
what
But
are the blinds?
1-3 with, in this hand, a $6 straddle. Also to note, the straddle is on half the time. Well, I'm big blind. I'm big blind. He's straddle.
Oh, so the straddle would be first to act here.
Straddle is under the gun. Yep. No button straddle.
Got it.
So folds to me in the big blind. I got 3 of spades, 3 of diamonds.
And you're just to the right of the straddle. So two people fold. Hero has 3 of spades, 3 of diamonds in the big blind. Okay. Yep.
Correct. And I make it 24 to go. One thing I kind of, again, with noting the play, there's been a lot of 3 and 4 betting against me and the villain. It's pretty common. I think most hands have had some pre-flop action because there's a lot of this dynamic of folds to me and then the two of us play a pot.
Just as a quick little thing here, Jimmy, too. And again, I've talked about this little spot sometimes, and a lot of people that play ring games live, they never have this opportunity because you're going to chop, right? Like in a rake game, you're not playing shorthanded. But you'll see it sometimes in tournaments. Like if you're going to go into the WSOP, you can't chop, right? And there's an ante. So you can develop like a limp strategy, being second to last to act and being out of position in a spot like this. And the way that you're supposed to do that is have some limp folds, some limp calls, and some limp re-raises in a given spot. It doesn't always just have to be razor fold. I don't know. Maybe with this guy, you play a razor fold, which is fine.
I wonder, first of all, I don't believe in limp raising at all. I don't believe in limping. We're going to play pots. That's just,
I get it, but
I don't really, so that's fair. I will say against this player and kind of against the field, I want to be raising and attacking because there's, especially the other two players, there's a lot of giving up, you know?
Mhm.
So I make it 24, pretty standard. Happy to take it down, happy to get called. But then villain min raises to 48, which is sort of his thing to do. He doesn't make huge chunky raises heads up as much. And one thing you were saying about playing shorthanded is we do play a lot of shorthanded, so maybe more experience than your average casino player.
Mm-hmm. So this doesn't mean this little 48 doesn't mean that much about his range at all?
This is like street poker. So basically what he's saying to me is, no, Jimmy, I want to be in charge of this hand. You're going to call my bets and I'm going to be the aggressor. I mean, the range wise, I think we can take out a lot of like just junk, I think almost every suited hand is available. King deuce plus, Jack 8 plus, Queen 8 plus.
What about big hands? Would he ever do this like as an induce with like aces or kings or something?
Absolutely. I think there's some big hands here for sure.
Okay.
I do wonder if maybe he goes a little bigger with bigger hands, and I think that comes into play in this hand a little bit. So I end up making the call, pretty straightforward. I got threes, I want to get to a flop.
All right, I'm going to call the pot about $100.
Yep.
Yep.
Flop is king of spades, 8 of hearts, 3 of hearts. So boom.
King of spades, 8 of hearts, 3 of hearts, bottom set.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I check. Looking back, I don't do a ton of leading. This could have been a lead spot looking back. But I check and villain checks behind.
I don't think this is a lead spot, and I'm all for leading. The reason why I don't think this is a lead spot is because it's not that just that it's a good board for the preflop 3-better, but you want to give him the opportunity to bluff. He should be betting off his king X. Even if he checks behind, it's not an absolute disaster. You can get several streets later on because you want to maximize against his value hands that are going to bet and call a check raise so you can start building.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping he has king queen here. So he checks behind, and we go to a turn, and the turn is the 5 of diamonds.
Okay.
And so hero then leads for 80. I think here, even though it's kind of a big bet in relation to the pot, that, his calling range is pretty static. He's going to be calling or not calling. It doesn't matter if I go 40 or 80.
Then go larger then.
Exactly. So I like to go larger.
Yep.
And villain almost automatically, 2 seconds after, 5 seconds, whatever, makes it 2:15 to go.
So 250. So he raises the turn after checking back the flop, by the way, right? He goes check, check. You bet 80, and now he raises it 215. Just a quick thing here, too. Like, love your bet, because how often is somebody... I know it's kind of weird because he min 3-bet pre-flop, but how often is somebody checking back this flop as the 3-better and then not calling turns? Because it's one of the more bluffed boards. Sometimes it's actually a little bit over-bluffed. I find king-high boards are a little bit over-bluffed, just because people think, it's a good board for me when they don't have as much king X, like maybe as opposed to like having ace X in a given situation. So you're always, usually you're going to get like 80 or 90% continues. The fact that he's raised now on the turn is quite interesting. And I don't want to say like it becomes a player dependent type of thing, but on paper here with what he's representing, you probably should call. My fear here, and I'm not talking about fearing overset. See, I fear as a poker player in no limit hold'em cash games, my biggest fear is missing value more than getting cooler.
You and me both.
So I'm thinking more along the lines of my fear here is like if he's pulling some bullshit like check back flop, I'm going to raise the turn with king queen or God forbid ace king and then somehow check the river and then you look like a jackass to yourself,
So that's interesting. I think it is player dependent. When I ranged him here, I took away ace king, king king, king queen, honestly even king jack, and I was already like...
You took away king king? Because that would seem to be like one of the more logical slow plays. Why? Because you think he would just call the turn?
Exactly. He would have bet small on the flop. This player isn't good at slow playing. He is a fast player. He's very aggressive. I don't see a ton of slow plays in him. Maybe it's a partial with king king again, but even going back to pre-flop, I kind of think king king maybe goes 75 instead of 48,
Or ace king too, right? Or ace king.
I think those are aces, and aces I think definitely bets. Again, there's a flush draw out there. I think all the flush draws are betting. A lot of the good kings are betting. The kings that can get called by a worse king, right? Because we're playing four-handed. I can have king X too, Honestly, I'm thinking that's where I was like, should I 3-bet this or not?
Well, here's the thing. Well, I'm just going to stop you real quick. And again, we can't necessarily make this assumption, but just to think through this logically, if you said that because of the way that this guy played this hand, he does not have a king, like he's not going to play a king this way.
No, I think he doesn't have big kings. Like, I'm thinking he has, some king 2, king 5, king 7, king 8, king 9. He has some of those that he wants to now check to get to the turn and maybe I'm betting by 8 now, right? And so he's trying to get value in that way, where I'm saying I think he bets the bigger ones already.
So you're saying like he could check back like a king. I think you threw in king 5 by mistake. Of course, that would be kings up. You mean like a hand like king 9 or king 10 that might check back and now bump the turn up? Because what I was going to say is if you were to say that he doesn't really have any kings, I know you're not saying that, the play would probably be to call, because then that creeps him towards polarization of sets or a bluff. If he doesn't have any middle street hand, the play would be to call. Now you're saying, well, maybe he can have, like, by the way, those hands that you're talking about here, you're saying like maybe he bets off a big king, but he checks like a medium strength king and then raises turn. I'm assuming that I'll go back to the first part of what I said, that if you call, it's going to go check, check at the end.
That's fair.
So
that makes me, I kind of lean towards 3-betting now. I almost wondered too at the time. I did get, I think, a little greedy thinking, that if he has kings up, like king 5, or how about 5-8, or honestly, even though I have all the threes, he could have 3-5 or king 5. I think like king 5 makes a lot of sense.
He could have a set of 5s.
He could have a set of 5s, and maybe partials of 8s. I don't. I think he bets a lot of 8s again, but not all of them. But a big chunk of them. I was like, so I ended up calling.
Now, before you tell me, Jimmy, what happens here on the river. So hero calls, okay? I'm just going to throw something out at you. And this is definitely not a play that I make often. Maybe I should utilize it a little bit more. So now the pot is 530. Could you ever call and then just bet even a river that doesn't even change the nuts? Like, I mean, I know there's some straights that come in. Like most of the cards that are, obviously you get a front door heart draw here. There's a lot of cards that change the nuts in the form of straights, but even if the river was like a 10 or a jack or a queen, could you just throw out like a $300-$400 bet on a brick river and then he's just going to call with those hands? And then if he raises you, you're like, wow, like this guy, but you got to be capable of bet folding, and sets are hard to fold. So
I don't like to fold sets. I'm definitely on that business. I am capable of folding big hands. I mean, I've been playing a long time. Well, I will tell you, it's funny you say that. So when I decided to call, because I'm a big believer in what's your plan, thinking a street or two ahead of time. And so my plan was on most, so I wasn't worried about the flush. Mm-hmm. I was already like, I considered the flush a very, very small possibility, if not zero here. Straights, I was definitely concerned like with the straightening card, but I was like, any relative safe river. My actual plan was to bet 700 to lead into him for over pot, because I think that is how I would bluff against him at this point. Mm-hmm. So that was my plan. And this is sort of where I feel like I could have played better.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I was looking over. You said you were going to turn your hand into a bluff?
No. I'm saying that if I was bluffing, I think let's say I had busted hearts. Like, let's say I had queen jack of hearts.
Right.
And this kind of went, if I was going to bluff, I would bet real big. I would polarize here and I would lead into them and try to take the pot down. So that was my plan, was to look bluffy.
Okay. So you were actually going to plan on leading some rivers here.
Correct. Okay. That was, and then I actually had a plan for most cards, but I didn't have a good plan for this one. And I realized that after it hit, because the river was another king, the king of clubs.
So the board now is king 8-3 5, right? This is I'll just repeat the action for the podcast people. 1-3-6 4-handed in Minnesota. Heroes in the big blind, which is second to last. That goes to 24. The straddle, who you have a lot of experience with, Ming clicks it to 48. You call. You flop bottom set. It comes out king 8-3 with a couple hearts. Check. You go for a check raise. Maybe he checks behind. Turns the 5 of diamonds. You bet 80. He raises you to 215. You call. Pot now is 530. Pot is like, you've got about 2,200 left. You were thinking actually about playing like a stop and go, donk a lot of rivers, but now the river comes a king. Now, what does that change? Well, you lose to kings full now that might have been kings up, right, on the turn. You're still losing to 5s full, and then does that make a king that you thought was gonna check behind more apt to bet? Like if he's raising with king 9 on the turn, he's very well still might bet here at the end. So I don't think you donk this card now.
And I didn't think so either. And like I said, I didn't have a great plan for a king. I was thinking that, honestly, I was kind of already thinking if he's got like the 2 pair of kings up, I'm going to get all his chips. So I end up checking, thinking that, if he was bluffing the turn, he's going to bluff this card for sure. And yeah, so then I checked to him and he bets 300, which sounds pretty benign, but in my mind, it was not. This felt super value-y to me. Again, lots of experience with this player. I think bluffs are going to be bigger. I don't think he has any bets for 300 that aren't that value. And I'm pretty confident in I had to read just generally because we play a lot together, that he thought he had the best hand. He was making a sizing, the 60% pot thing. I have to defend with 8s. And I do. He knows that if I had an 8 there, let's say I had ace 8 or queen 8, I'm going to call because I got to defend against him because he's an active player, so. I
get 2 questions for you, though. You say that, he's making a bet because he thinks he's got the best hand. Maybe we agree with that, but don't you think he would think that he has the best hand here with king 9 or king 10?
Well, I do.
Okay. So that's question 1. Question 2 is if he has an unfull king here and he was playing it this way, and you went to say 800 here, he's not going to fold, right?
Yeah, well, looking back on it now, I would say yes. That was I will say so. I got a little confused on what I wanted to do with our stack sizes. My initial reaction was to raise, but in my head I just wanted to go too big, and I didn't want to get like half my stack in and then have him go over the top.
You know, the funny thing about that though, Jimmy, is that I know it sounds crazy about like doing that, but I will say that I feel more comfortable. What we just talked about before the river came a king, I feel much more comfortable check raise folding a very strong second nuttish type of hand like in this scenario. I find it much easier to check raise fold for value than if we were to just like get a different river and then we donk bet and get raised. That's a harder bet fold than a check raise fold. That's me personally, because there's no way he's ever coming back over the top with an unfull hand.
This player might, but I agree with you, and I think this is where I messed up, and I do appreciate that. I think you're right. I think that the check raise is so strong for me. If he three bets it there, I can release, but I sort of in my head, I was like, if I put $1,000 in here or more, make it like 12 or whatever, can I really ever fold? And in the moment, I just didn't think I could. So then I went through the combinations, and I didn't give him all the king tens. I said he's got some king nine, but then he also has king eight. He also would have king seven then. I gave him king six, and I gave him king five. And I also gave him fives full. And after all that thinking, and maybe it was 3 a.m, I just called like a chump.
Yeah, before you do give us the reveal, I do think that I mean, again, you seem to like have a lot of sort of, information about this guy, but I have a really, really hard time not raising here as played. I mean, I think I raise here. It's interesting because there's Josh Shepard who calls into the show, I think, a bunch. He said, I'd make this 1,500. And my only thing about making this 1,500 is the fact that if you make it that size, Josh, then you're just always calling off. And the problem then is that now you're risking extra money, unless you were going to fold to the 1,000 more. But I would want to kind of make this like 1,000, 900 to 1,000, something like that. But okay, so you just called. Hero calls. Okay.
And then he has king six, and I win.
King six, so unfull king. So you were right about your read on the flop, right?
I think I ranged him correctly. I just get to the river, and like I said, I didn't have a great plan, and then I didn't really think through the check raise, bet fold, and my sizing. But I think after the long thought and then sending the hand to you, I agreed with your first instinct. That's what I came to. My thought was I should have gone, just made it 500 more. He's never going to fold any value hands, and then if he jams, I can reevaluate.
I mean, the other quick thing here too is that when you sort of look at the combos of hands that he might have here, I mean, because you've got 3-3 in your hand, like, okay, so say he slow plays some 8-8. I mean, there's 3 combos of total 8-8. There's 3 combos of 5-5. There's 1 combo of king-king. However you want to do it, some combos of king-5 and king-8. Of course, we don't know how often he's always playing those types of hands. And I just think that in this spot, like when a king feels like it can always bet because of this river, it starts to point towards more of a check raise because of that fact. Because here's the other thing though too, if the river was like a brick, and then he were to bomb he bet the river, that might be more scary than him betting the river here, because remember, we said that he was going to, say, play a raise on the turn with weak kings and then check back the river. But now on this king, he feels like he has carte blanche to bet because he has trips. So
sure, I think he was going to bet a lot of his kings too, but I agree with you. I think you're right on.
Yeah.
That's why we call you.
All right, Jimmy. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.